ఇంటర్మీడియట్ విద్యారంగంలో అగ్రగామి మన NSR ఇంపల్స్ ఎడ్యుకేషన్ ఇన్స్టిట్యూషన్. ఐఐటి జేఈఈ అయినా నీట్ అయినా తిరుగులేని విద్యా సంస్థ NSR ఇంపల్స్.
Hello students, now let us continue with the parameters of the growth. So we have completed the parameters of the growth as comparing abiotic and biotic, that is growth. And next one is metabolism, and again we have the comparison of parameters like anabolism and catabolism, right. Now let us continue with the characteristics which we try to use in defining a living organism in a living world. So all the characteristics what we are trying to discuss in our lesson, that these are the characteristics we are trying to define a living organism. So what is living organism, we just have started and we are discussing all the characteristics one after the other in the first chapter, living world, right. So we completed growth and metabolism. Let us continue with the next one. The other one is nothing but reproduction. What is a reproduction? So we all have what is a common process of defining reproduction. Generally we say, most basically we say that the process of production of progeny, the process of production of progeny from the parent cell or from the parent itself, it's called as reproduction. General way is, what is the general way? The process of formation of offspring. Sometimes we can write, instead of progeny we can write offspring. Okay, instead of offspring we can write progeny, daughter cell, right, or daughter organism, right. The process of production of progeny or the offspring from the parent cell of parental organism itself, we call it as what? A reproduction. Now if you look at reproduction here, in generally if you take, for example, as we discussed, unicellular organisms. In unicellular organisms, what is the best example? So most commonly studied example always is nothing but bacteria. So in case of bacteria, if you take, for example, the statement is very important statement. We have previously we have the statement in the final NEET also. So it is given as one of the option in the final NEET question. In the previous NEET question papers, if you look at, we have the question that find out the correct statements from the given statements. There are so many statements, I mean 4 statements. In that, one of the statement is, in unicellular organisms, so it is given that in unicellular organisms growth is synonymous to reproduction. What are the 2 parameters we are taking? We are taking growth phenomena and we are taking reproduction. Okay, so what do we say? Growth is synonymous to reproduction, meaning growth exactly the same, similar to reproduction. Why? Because we discussed in the previous class where one bacteria divides and produces 2 daughter cells. It divides, it undergoes binary fission. As a result of binary fission, binary means dividing, 1 becomes 2. So here 2 daughter cells. And you remember, we call these 2 daughter bacterial cells, we call them as clones. We call them as clones. Guys, the terminology clones, we will get it even in your second year. Wherever you get clones, the meaning is the daughter cells or the daughter organisms or the offsprings which are produced here, the 2 offsprings which are produced here are exactly similar to their parental cell. 2 offsprings are exactly identical. So we say the 2 daughter cells are exactly the ditto Xerox copies of the parental cell. That's why it's called binary fission. Okay. So here, as we discussed earlier, in this case the growth also can be defined as, let us write complete statement, increase in number of cells Okay, why do you call increase in number of cells here? Because one bacteria cell here, this is mother cell, it is producing 2 daughter cells. Now after some time 2 will become 4, 4 will become 8, 8 will become 16, and then they will undergo multiplication. They undergo what is called multiplication. Okay, they undergo multiplication. Every time there is doubling of their number. Why? Because 1 becomes 2, 2 again divides and produces 4, 4 again divides and produces 8. Like that the chain will continue. So what you can see here in this case, there is increase in number of cells. Right. So that is referred as growth, and itself is also referred as reproduction. So same definition is also applied for reproduction. Why? Because every time there is a number cells, daughter cells produced here are more in number. What you can see here is production of offsprings. Offsprings means daughter cells. The production of offsprings itself is called as reproduction. So growth also can be defined as increase in number of cells. That itself is also called as reproduction. That means growth and reproduction in case of unicellular organisms, it is synonymous, meaning both are same. Increase in number of cells itself we call growth, increase in number of cells itself we call reproduction. Right guys, so here when you study about reproduction, this is what we are discussing in case of where we are discussing in case of unicellular organisms. So let us take this first one as unicellular organisms. Now reproduction let us also study in case of multicellular organisms. Multicellular organisms. The total story comes for reproduction happens in unicellular organisms, mostly bacteria, by binary fission, right. Now reproduction occurs in higher organisms, for example multicellular organisms. Reproduction here, R means reproduction. What is R? R means reproduction. It is of 3 types. What are they? It can be categorized as, the first one is a vegetative reproduction. What is the first one? Vegetative reproduction. Second one is asexual reproduction, and the third one is sexual reproduction. So let us discuss all 3 categories. Coming to in case of multicellular organisms, reproduction can be divided into 3 types: vegetative reproduction, asexual reproduction, and followed by sexual reproduction. Coming to vegetative reproduction, let us take some examples. For examples, if you take filamentous algae, examples I am writing here, filamentous algae and some members of fungi and mosses. Mosses means they come under bryophytes. Now these all, they undergo the phenomena called fragmentation. They undergo the phenomena called, vegetatively they reproduces by the process called fragmentation. What is meant by fragmentation? Any part of the plant or part of the algae or fungi or a moss, it get broken, separated, wherever it falls, that itself develops into a new organism. That is called fragmentation. Fragmentation means broken parts. Any broken part from algae or the broken part from fungi or the broken part from moss, that develops itself into a new organism. That itself is process called fragmentation. Right. So even you can take amoeba. Amoeba divides by binary fission. Hydra also you can take, right. So this all will come under what? Lower organisms. This all will come under, I am writing here, even you can take amoeba, right, Hydra. So these all are like lower organisms, even they also divide by binary fission, and they produces new cells, means they get broken down and each part develops into a new organism, right. And here we know that even let us come to asexual reproduction. What is meant by asexual reproduction? Now both asexual and sexual along with the lower organisms, it can be seen even in case of higher plants. Now in case of higher plants, what happens is asexual reproduction itself is called vegetative propagation. Okay, itself is called as vegetative propagation. In case of higher plants, asexual reproduction itself is called vegetative propagation. Why? Because here also the same thing, any part of the plant itself is involved in the production of a new plant. For example, you know it very well, jasmine plant, right? Jasmine plant, you know, in summer we get jasmine flowers mostly commonly, right? Generally what they will do, if anyone has jasmine plant, they will take the lower branch, they will cut the stem, the branch of the stem they will cut, again they will put it in the soil. From the cutted branch of jasmine, again new jasmine will come. So in, you know, that so far so many examples we discussed, like in morphology. That is what I told you, know, in every chapter morphology is very, very, very important. Every chapter will get examples of morphology. Most of the concepts are related with the concept and examples of morphology. So there we studied stem modifications. What are they? Underground stem modifications and aerial, subaerial, right. So there is stolons, suckers, rhizome, that is ginger, corm, tuber, bulb, right. So offset, these all are involved in vegetative propagation. What is that? The separated part of the plant, if you keep it in the soil, again new plant will come, itself is called vegetative propagation. Now coming to sexual reproduction, you know that it is referred as fusion of male and female gametes. Fusion of male and female gametes. Now the fusion of male and female gametes itself is nothing but what do we call sexual reproduction. One second guys. Sorry guys, let us continue here. What do we say? A fusion of male and female, it may be gametes, so the fusion of male and female organisms that lead to formation of the zygote, and zygote again leads to formation of a living organism, again lead to formation of a living organism. Okay, again lead to formation of a completely new organism, then that comes under what we call sexual reproduction. That is fusion of male and female lead to formation of zygote, zygote develops into again complete organism, that itself is called as what? A sexual reproduction, right. Now when we see here, coming to the part of the reproduction, apart from this all, if you look at in some cases, now after listening all categories, if you take some cases as an exceptional cases, after listening that you just tell me whether reproduction is considered as a defining property or a non-defining property, means can we use this as in defining a living organism, or reproduction cannot be used as a defining property, right. I will tell you some exceptions. Now if you take the exceptions, like for example, very, very important note point I am writing. So let us write here reproduction. So here if you take reproduction, the most important example, right, we can take sterile moles, sterile worker bees, sterile moles, sterile worker bees, as well as infertile human couples. Infertile human couples. Now these are exceptions. Why? So infertile human couples, they will not be having a child, so they don't have kids. So we cannot call them as living. Yes, they are living, but they are not involved in production of a progeny, means there is no progeny production, they are not having kids or child. So as they are not having progeny or offspring, Can we call them as non-living? No, na, they are called as living only. Similarly, sterile moles is the same case. Sterile worker bees, you know that worker bees, male bees, right? Generally, they are not involved in production of progeny. So, we cannot call them as living. Yes, they are living. So, even though they are living, but they are not involved in production of progeny, it does not mean that they are non-living, but still they are living. So, what do you say? Even there is no production of progeny, they are considered as a living. That is why we say reproduction is a non-defining property. Itself is considered as a non-defining property. Reproduction cannot be used in defining the living organism. So, itself is called as what? A non-defining property. What is the reason for that? Even though these all are living, but they are not involved in production of progeny or offspring, it does not mean that they are non-living, they are living only. So, living means even they don't need to exhibit the phenomena called production of progeny, but still they are considered as living. So, reproduction cannot be used as the property in defining the living organism. So, it is reproduction is considered as a non-defining property. So, whenever we discuss any parameter, a final conclusion is very, very important. So far what all we discuss? Growth. Growth is a non-defining property. Metabolism, it is a defining property. Reproduction, it is a non-defining property. Right. Now, quickly let me revise quickly about reproduction. What is reproduction? It is nothing but the process of production of progeny or offspring from the parent. Now, if you take unicellular organisms and we are comparing with multicellular organisms, unicellular organisms same case bacteria binary fission, two or offsprings are exactly identical and they are called clones. So, in unicellular organisms, growth is synonymous to reproduction. The statement is very, very important. That is a previous question statement. That means increase in number of cells. It is itself is also called growth. Itself is also called reproduction. In unicellular organisms, growth and reproduction are same. Now, coming to multicellular organisms, we have three types: vegetative, asexual and sexual. You can take examples like filamentous algae, fungi, mosses, amoeba and hydra. In these three cases, broken parts again wherever they fall develop into a new organism, it is called fragmentation. And coming to asexual reproduction, itself is called vegetative propagation. Most commonly we see in higher plants, any part of which get detached from the parent plant, wherever it fall, that develops into new organism. Sexual reproduction, there is a fusion of male and female gametes. Better you can take here, because we talk in terms of higher plants, better you can take male and female gametes that lead to formation of zygote, and that again lead to development of a living organism. That will come under this. And there are some exceptions. Infertile human couples, sterile moles, sterile worker bees are not involved in production of progeny, but still they are considered as living. So, reproduction is non-defining property, not a defining property to define a living organism. Now, let us continue with the next parameter. The next parameter to define a living organism. What is the next parameter we can take? A cellular organization. What we can take? A cellular organization. Now in lower classes you might be studied that all we know that basic thing, if you take, there are cells. When group of cells join together it lead to formation of tissue. When group of tissue join together it lead to formation of organ, and that lead to formation of organ system, right, and that leads to formation of a living organism, right. So when you take that, in living organism must ensure the basic thing what we find is nothing but cells. Of course what they are made up of means, of course we say molecules. Molecules are made up of with what is called as atoms, right. Of course you can take atoms join together form molecules, molecules join together form is cell. Now cell is the basic unit of life for a living organism. So you all know it very well. Cell is considered as a basic unit of life. Cell is there means it is a living cell. If the living cell is there means that is called as a living organism. But here if you look at in cellular organization, if you look at, we have a cellular interactions. In cellular organization we find what is called, right, cellular interactions. What are the cellular interactions? Meaning they undergo interactions, they keep showing what are called interactions. That means what do we say here? Simply if you look at, cells are not arranged, cells are cannot be called, simply cannot be called as constituents of molecules. Cells cannot be called as constituents of molecules, meaning what? Simply I took some molecules, I kept some molecules together at one place. Can I call this as cell? Simply cells cannot be called as constituents of molecules. Then what are cells? Cells arises as a result of interactions between molecules. Interactions between molecules. Try to understand the meaning of the statement here. Simply if you keep molecules at one place, it cannot be called as a cell. Then what is a cell? Cell arises as a result of interactions between molecule. When all molecules they show interaction, what is food, what is water, it's there, it's going to this, and this is sending to this is sending to this. All are showing interactions. One is interacting with the other one. When all interact with one another, then only it's called as a cell. Simply I took some molecules, if I keep all molecules at one place, I cannot call this as a cell. So cell cannot be a constituent of molecule. Cell is not a constituent of molecule. Simply it cannot be called as constituent of molecules. Then what is a cell? Cells arises as a result of reactions between the molecules. Right? Similar statement I will try to give you the same other one. Let us see this. So if you look at, tissue is not a constituent of cells, but arises as a result of interactions of cells. Guys, very simple statement what I am trying to give you. What is that? Tissue is not a constituent, arises as a result of interactions of cells. What's the meaning of this? Simply I took some cells for example cell A, cell B, cell C, cell D. I took some cells, I kept and I placed at one place. When I keep all the cells at one place, can I call this as a tissue No, it cannot be called as a tissue. That is what the statement says. Tissue is not a simply constituent of cells. Constituent of cells ante oka aggregate chesi combine chesi, when we combine a group of cells, when we join some group of cells, simply it cannot be called as a tissue. Then what is a tissue? Tissue arises as a result of interactions of cells. So, when these cells, when they are showing interactions among themselves, so one cell is sending food and water to this, next one is sending hormones and food and water, when all showing interactions, then it arises, it forms a group of cells together, it forms what is called a tissue. Group of cells together, it forms a tissue. Simply if you take the constituent of cells, meaning simply if you keep one cell beside other cell, it cannot be called as a tissue. Tissue arises as a result of interactions of the cells. Similarly, if you come to molecules, molecules cannot be called simply as the constituents of atoms, but they arises as a result of interactions. They arises as a result of interactions. That is what we say, cellular interactions. When all cells if you keep, and that cannot be called tissue, when you keep all tissues beside, it cannot form the organ. When you keep all organs at one place, it cannot form organ system. Simply if you keep all organ systems at one place, if you take digestive system and kept, respiratory system lungs you kept, and digestive system intestine you kept, and excretion kidneys you kept, heart you kept at one place, can it form the living organism? Yeah, you took some digestive system kept here, respiratory system you kept here, kidneys you kept here. Now I can say in one place all organ systems are there. Can I call it as a living organism? Definitely no. So what they have to show? They have to show what are called interactions. They have to show what they are called interaction. What you call food pipe, windpipe should connect to the stomach. Stomach should be connected to the what you call intestine, and then it being connected to the lungs, and after that it being connected to the kidneys. When all are connected, all show interactions, one is operating with the function of other. If all are doing function, all showing interaction, then only it gives a structure and function, structure and shape, a structure and function together, it gives a particular shape, that itself is called a living organism. That means most important thing is interaction. Cellular interactions makes the formation of cellular organization. Now come to the point, can we call cellular organization as a defining property or a non-defining property? So when it comes to this cellular organization, definitely this will come under as a, so better I will write with black only because everywhere I am writing. So this is called as a defining property of living organisms. Yes, if the cellular interaction is taking place, cellular organization is there, definitely that is a living organism. That means cellular organization is a parameter used to define what is a living organism. So this is a defining property. Cellular interaction itself is a defining property. Right. So if you take interactions, now let us continue with what is the interactions. Interactions. In interactions, let us take one of the interaction is nothing but movement. Under interactions we are taking one of the parameter as movement. You know, organisms, locomotion, we generally call it as what? Locomotion, means organism is moving from one place to other place. It is called movement or locomotion, right? It is called locomotion, moving from one place to other place. Now the movements, if you look at in case of organisms, these are divided into two categories. We say spontaneous movement, and other one is called as induced movement. Spontaneous movement and other one is called induced movement. So when you take spontaneous and induced movement, in this case, let us see now what is spontaneous and what is induced movement. Now in this case, if you look at spontaneous, meaning the response, or we say a movement of an organism, ORG, meaning organism without any change, without any change, or you can say without any change in the environment, but you can write without any change in the environment, or we can say it happens suddenly. That is behavior of the organism very suddenly. Sometimes we say no, when we ask the question, some people they will give spontaneously, they respond, spontaneously they will give the answers, means they will not take much time to think, suddenly they will act according to the action whatever is happening in the environment. So here nothing is influencing, suddenly the organism is keep moving from one place to other place, that means movement of the organism without any change in the environment. Simply if the organism keep moving here and there and sitting there for some time, suddenly wake up and starts moving here and there, it is not because of any force in the environment, it is not because of any change in the environment, it is a sudden act from the behavior of the organism, it is called a spontaneous movement. Then coming to induced movement. Okay, what is induced movement here? So here the movement of organism, same thing I am writing, a movement of organism due to changes in the environment, due to changes in the environment. Someone is inducing, someone is making the movement of the organism. What is that someone? Maybe the environment. Okay, sometimes what happens, suddenly forest fire is taking place. Now looking at that fire, the animals get frightened and then start moving away from the environment. So there the movement of organism, that means animals start running from that place, that is movement. That movement, it is because of change in the environment, it is because of forest fire taking place in the environment. As environment is making them to move, a fire is making them to move. Without fire they will not move. As fire is making them scared and they starts moving and running away from that place, that itself is called induced movement. It happens due to changes in the environment. Alright. So both will come under movements, but you can take another example under movements. You know, we say under movements we can also take one more parameters. With that we will study examples. What we say is response to external stimuli. Response to external stimuli. Response to external stimuli. Actually response to external stimuli come under what? It will come under induced movement itself. Okay, what is stimuli? A change in the environment. A change in the environment is called stimuli. An organism starts showing response to stimuli itself is called irritation. I will just write that, irritation. What is the meaning of irritation? What is the meaning of irritation? Response to stimuli, response of an organism towards stimuli, Try to understand, guys, what is stimuli? A change in the environment is called stimuli. Environment is normal, weather is normal, there is no change, you cannot call stimuli. Suddenly in winter season, starts or rainy season starts, suddenly start falling heavy rain. Then what is that? That is stimuli, change in the environment. Stimuli, any change in the environment, it is called stimuli. So response to external stimuli means surrounding environment. Then if the organism, or for every action equivalent opposite reaction, right? If there is any change in the environment, definitely the organism start responding towards its environment, right? That itself is called irritation. Response of an organism towards stimuli, response of the organism towards the change in the environment itself is called as irritation. Okay, why? Because suddenly winter season we feel so cold, so we suddenly start feeling that so shivering, and we feel the feeling itself is expressed in terms of irritation, right? Because this is not normal, it is something beyond the normal, or something it is not like normal environment. This is something change what is happening to the environment, and when we start shivering our clothes, that itself is a response what we are giving, that itself is called irritation. And I can give some more examples to this. You can take some more examples like phototrophism. Let me give you some more examples here. So, we are in the second one, that is response to external stimuli. Let us have some more examples of this. So, better let me write this side. So, response to external stimuli, if you take, we have some more examples. Let us take phototrophism. What is phototrophism? The growth of stem or any part towards sunlight. The growth of the stem or any part of the plant towards stem. You know, sometimes sunflower, best example, you know, that plant it will grow, or the stem it will grow, or leaves will grow, the stem bends towards sunlight. That means here growth is happening towards sunlight. The stem will grow due to sunlight. So, the growth of the stem, growth of any part of the plant towards sunlight itself is called as phototrophism. Guys, you remember in morphology we studied this. Stem growth grows towards the sunlight, it is called phototrophism. Root grows towards gravity, that is called geotrophism. Did you remember? Here you can also take best example sunflower, you can also take example sunflower. Sunflower turns towards the sun, that is trophism, movement. Trophism means movement, that is movement towards sun, right. Let us have some more examples let us take Mimosa pudica. Mimosa pudica, it is nothing but it is commonly called touch me not. Touch me not. Here what happens, this mimosa, you know that the plant has the leaves, if you touch immediately the leaves will get close, and when no change in the environment they get open. If any animal is trying to come close to that, if we are human being or any animal or anything is trying to touch the leaf, they will get close. That is why they are called touch me not, that is scientific name is Mimosa pudica. And you can also take Desmodium gyrans. Desmodium gyrans. So, even this is called commonly Indian telegraphic plant. Indian telegraph plant. So, there is another example, we are giving examples response to external stimuli. If you touch, it will show response to external environment, mimosa, that is why it is called touch me not. Desmodium gyrans is called Indian telegraphic plant. If any animal is trying to eat or any animal is trying to find harmful, it is doing harmful to the plant, it gives and it rotates and it secretes some of the hormones. And the next desmodium plant growing in that, it identifies that there is some danger or there is some harmful activity is going on, and the plant becomes very hard, the stem becomes very hard. So, one plant gives signal to the next plant that there is some danger or some harmful activity is happening, or it is being attacked by animal. Then the next desmodium releases a hormones, it makes its stem very hard. Soft stem will become hard stem due to secretion of the hormones which happens internally. One desmodium gyrans, it gives signal by secreting hormones to the next desmodium plant. That is why it is also called Indian telegraphic plant. Okay, so here these are nothing but examples for response to external stimuli. So, this all will come under what? Interactions. Under interactions we have movements and also we have phototrophism. So, interactions also can be called as what? Interactions can also be said as a defining property of a living organisms. defining property of a living organisms. I will quickly revise this. Look at here, cellular organization meaning atoms join together form molecules, form cells, tissues, organs and organ systems, and cell is the basic unit of life. Simply we aggregate them, we cannot form the organs and organ systems. They need to show interactions. Molecules are not simply constituent of atoms, they arise as a result of interactions. A tissue simply it is not a constituent of cell, they arise as a result of interactions between the cells. So, what we are discussing here cellular interactions. If you take interactions, we have two parameters under that. Movement may be spontaneous or induced. Spontaneous means suddenly, that is a movement of organism without any change in the environment. Induced means due to changes happening in the environment, and these changes are called external stimuli. Organisms start showing response to external stimuli, that itself is called irritation. Have examples: phototrophism, growth of the stem towards sunlight is phototrophism. You can see that in rotating of the flower towards sun, best example sunflower. Touch me not plant, it is called Mimosa pudica, and Desmodium gyrans, it is called Indian telegraphic plants. Guys, I think you completed root modifications in every the living world concept is very easy. So, for today's revision I am giving you, so make morphology revision. So, I think you might have completed root. Now, let us take a stem modifications. Okay, so today all of you try to complete a stem modifications. Guys, morphology is such an important chapter. The examples and the concepts keep repeating almost in every chapter. If you want to make thorough understanding of coming chapters, you need to have a good grip on complete. Of course, I agree there are so many examples, but if you practice, they become very easy for you. For today's class in morphology, try to do revision along with the living organism. You give 1 or 2 times reading, you will understand that, but make sure that you do the revision stem modifications. Today's you have to complete revision of stem modifications.